While European countries like Greece, Spain, and Cyprus continue to battle extreme economic hardship, Germany continues to defy the odds. But recent economic data has some wondering if their strong first quarter forecast was premature. Jack Barton explains.
In Germany, it's hard to get a sense there's a crisis in the Eurozone. German firm Haribo, the creator of gummy bears, says sales remain strong.
Haribo has not been affected by any crisis of the past. On the contrary, actually, we're going to buy a property this year in order to expand our production.
It's a similar story across Germany. Vehicle manufacturers, including BMW and Audi, continue to grow, despite tens of thousands of car sector layoffs in neighbouring countries like France and Belgium. An export strategy shift away from Europe towards emerging countries and the US has helped. But officials say flexible work contracts have also allowed companies to retain skilled labour. And while small to medium-sized businesses in southern Europe struggle to get credit and pay high interest rates if they do, German SMEs still have it good.
SMEs are able to make use of extremely low interest loans and funding programs in order to finance different phases of their growth.
That doesn't mean Germany's economy is foolproof. German business confidence fell last month amid renewed concern over the debt crisis and its impact on the single currency area, which is still struggling to emerge from recession. Feeling the effects of mild contagion, Germany's economy did contract in the final quarter of 2012. And economists warn the rebound forecast for the first quarter of this year will still not equate to robust growth if indeed it arrives at all.
In a situation like the current one, Germany should be a super booming economy in the Eurozone, but it's not the locomotive of the Eurozone. It's basically just a slow train.
A slow train it may be, but with France's economy at a near standstill, it's the only economic engine with any chance of pulling the 17-nation single currency area out of its current recession. Jack Barton, CCTV, Bonn.
For more on this latest economic news from Germany, I was able to get some insights from the chief international economist at Deutsche Bank, Stefan Schneider.
We have heard that for quite some time, especially from the US, and obviously the US, like also the IMF, they would like to see stronger global demand, but the German economy is growing, and doing too much for the economy, meaning finance additional demand via credit, we have seen where this is leading. This has actually caused the crisis we have in Southern Europe. So I think the Germans will think twice before starting to go on a credit finance spending spree.
There's a report out today that the German economic output is at near stagnation, and an economist is saying that it's a really gloomy picture in the Eurozone. He went on to say the Eurozone recession is deepening once again as businesses report that they have become increasingly worried about the region's debt crisis and political instability. Is that an accurate appraisal, or do you think that's overstating facts?
It might be overstating a little bit, but obviously the Eurozone is in a recession. GDP shrank by 0.6. Last year, the Eurozone GDP overall also shrank by 0.6%. And if you look at the indicators like the purchasing managers indicators, they are clearly below the 50 boom-bust line. So we expect that the recession will probably last till spring, and we don't expect a positive growth number before the third quarter. So yes, the overall situation is pretty bleak, and it has to do with the recent deterioration on the political side. Here, Cyprus needs to be mentioned. Also, the deadlock in Italian politics, and more recently, the problems with the Portuguese Constitutional Court ruling.
There aren't any easy answers, but if you were to get a phone call and somebody said, hey, Stefan, give us some advice, what would you say?
I think this is really tough. I mean, if there had been an easy answer, I mean, we have by now been in this crisis for 3 years. I think someone would have come up with an easy answer. So I think there is no hope for an easy answer. The problem is to find the right balance between savings on the fiscal side to regain the trust of financial markets without basically saving the economy to death. And this is very difficult, especially because for all this kind of feedback loops, meaning that if just one country consolidates its fiscal policy, it's a completely different story compared to if all the other countries in the Eurozone do the same thing. So I think it's really a very difficult exercise in fine-tuning, but the fact that the economies have to deleverage, that the government deficits have to be reined in, I think there is no kind of way out, and we just have to go through this period and hope for the best and avoid policy mistakes, which we have done in the past on almost a regular basis.
Stefan, I guess in terms of people here in the West and how we view things, it's almost like being on the shore and watching in the distance in the ocean. You see someone drowning and the lifeguard goes in to save that person, and the drowning victim is now pulling down the lifeguard. It seems as though even the stronger economies in Europe are suffering as well. Is that a correct assessment?
Again, to a certain extent, yes. If you look at, I mean, there's a clear demarcation between southern European countries and northern European countries. The northerns are doing somewhat better, but it's a small group. It's Germany, it's Austria, it's Finland to a certain extent, and that's pretty much it. And I mean, what has been also a kind of a change is the spotlight the French economy came into, especially given the problems with the government, but also given some of their structural problems. They have basically a constant current account deficit. They have a very hard time to rein in their fiscal deficits. And so, yes, it's obviously the crisis is spreading. I mean, it started in Greece, then it was Ireland, Portugal. Now it's to a certain extent Italy and Portugal are in the spotlight. So yes, but I mean, it's all the same basically effect. It was triggered by an overspending, overborrowing in the private sector and the public sector. And now, basically, we have to cope with the hangover.
Stefan, one final question, and briefly, if you can. Are there any bright spots, anything out there on the horizon that you see that gives you hope?
I mean, we see that the ECB is trying to do everything it can. Although some of the problems are within the banking system, they need time. And I think one thing which actually gives us some hope is that the global economy seems to pick up some momentum, the US and Asia, and obviously this will help European exports to a certain extent and might compensate a little bit for the weakness in domestic demand.